The morning light came slow and weak through the broken wall of a small mud house at the edge of Merper village. Nobody in that village thought about that house much. Nobody cared about who lived inside it. But inside that cracked and falling house lived a boy named Arian. He was 17 years old. His clothes were old and thin. His shoes had holes in them. His stomach was empty most mornings, but his eyes were different. His eyes burned with something most people in that village never had his. Eyes had a fire that could not be put out. Arian woke up before sunrise every single day. Not because someone told him to. Not because he had a job waiting. He woke up because he was afraid. If he slept too long, the day would move without him, and he could not afford to lose even 1 hour. He had too little time and too many dreams. His mother, Savita, was a small woman with a bent back and broken hands. She washed clothes at the river for rich families. She came home every evening with wet hands and a tired face, but she never complained. Not once. She would come home, look at Arian, and smile, that simple small smile that made him feel like the world was still okay. His father had left when Arian was 6 years old. He walked out the door one morning and never came back. No letter, no message, nothing. The village people said bad things about his father. They said he ran away with another woman. They said he was weak. They said many things. But Arian never talked about his father. He locked that pain deep inside and used it like fuel. The village of Merper had a system. The rich people stayed rich. The poor people stayed poor. Nobody crossed that line. Nobody tried. If a poor boy tried to rise up, the village would push him back down. They would laugh. They would say, "Who do you think you are?" They would remind him of his place every single day. Arian went to the government school every day. He sat in the back corner because his uniform was not clean like the others. He did not have a proper bag. He carried his books in a plastic bag tied with a rope. But he listened to every word the teacher said. He remembered everything. He stayed after school and asked questions while other students ran home to play. There was one teacher in that school who saw something in Arian. His name was Mr. Sharma. He was an old man with white hair and thick glasses. He had been teaching in that village for 30 years. And 30 years, he had seen maybe 2 or 3 students with real fire. In their eyes, Arian was one of them. One afternoon, Mr. Sharma called Arian to stay back after class. He looked at the boy for a long time without speaking. Then he placed a book on the desk in front of Arian. It was an old book. The cover was torn. Pages were yellow, but the title was still clear. The Story of Men Who Changed the World. Told Arian to read it and bring it back when he was done. Arian held that book like it was made of gold. He walked home slowly that evening, looking at the cover again and again. That night his mother had made simple rice and dal. There was not much, but she gave Arian the bigger portion. She always gave him more. She always went to sleep a little hungry so he could eat a little more. He did not know this at the time. He found out years later, and when he did, it broke something inside him in a way that never fully healed. He read the book that night by the light of a small candle. The stories inside were about people who had nothing, people who were laughed at, people who were told they were nothing, people who fell down many times and stood up every single time. And every one of them had one thing in common. They never accepted the life that others decided for them. Arian closed the book at 3 in the morning and sat in the dark for a long time. He made a decision that night. It was not a loud decision. He did not shout it. He did not tell anyone. He just decided quietly and completely that he would not stay poor. He would not wash clothes at the river. He would not die in this small mud house. He would become something. He did not know what yet, but something big, something real. Next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. He went to the river not to play, but to think. He sat on a flat stone and watched the water move fast and clean over the rocks. He thought about that book. He thought about his mother. He thought about his father who left. He thought about the rich boys at school who laughed at his plastic bag. Then a strange thing happened. A man came and sat near the river, not far from Aryan. He was dressed well. A city man clearly out of place in Merper. The man was on a phone call speaking about a business deal, about money, about a company. Aryan listened without trying to listen, and one line from that phone call stayed in his head like a nail going into wood. The man said the only difference between a poor man and a rich man is that the rich man decided he would not stay poor. The man finished his call, got up, and walked away without ever looking at Aryan. But those words hit the boy like cold water on a sleeping face. He stood up from the rock, walked home, and told his mother he needed one thing. He needed her to let him go to the city when he finished school. He did not want to stay in Merper. He needed to go where things were possible. His mother looked at him for a very long time. Her eyes became wet, but she did not cry. She nodded. Her voice was barely a sound when she spoke. She said, "Go." She said, "Go, and do not look back." She said, "I will be fine." That one word from his mother gave Aryan more strength than anything else in the world had ever given him. He went back to school the next day and sat in his corner seat. But he did not feel like the same boy anymore. Inside, something had shifted. Something old had died and something new had taken its place. He did not know yet what was coming. He did not know the betrayals waiting for him ahead. He did not know the nights he would spend hungry in the Cordaind city. He did not know the people who would use him and throw him away. He did not know any of it, but he would find out soon enough. The city of Jaipur was nothing like Merperian arrived on a hot Tuesday morning with a small bag on his back and 700 rupees in his pocket. That was everything he had in the world. The bus dropped him at a loud, crowded station, and the moment he stepped off the bus, the city swallowed him whole. There were people everywhere, cars were honking, buildings were tall and shining. The roads were wide and fast. There were shops with bright lights. Even the smell of the city was different. It smelled like money and smoke, and something else, something cold and hard that he could not name yet. He stood in the middle of that station for 10 full minutes just looking around. Boys from the village always looked lost in the city, and the city people could always tell. They could tell from the shoes, from the bag, from the way a person stood. They could always tell Aryan had come to Jaipur because Mr. Sharma had given him a name before he left, a man named Deepak Verma, who ran a small printing business in the old part of the city. Mr. Sharma said Deepak was a good man who sometimes helped young people who showed promise. He wrote a small letter for Aryan and folded it carefully. Aryan found Deepak Verma's shop after 2 hours of walking and asking. He was a fat man with a loud voice and ink-stained fingers. He read Mr. Sharma's letter twice, looked at Aryan from head to toe, and then said he could sleep in the back of the shop and work for very little money in exchange for food and a place to stay. It was not much, but Aryan Tokaith worked in that printing shop from morning to late at night. He loaded paper, he cleaned machines, he ran deliveries across the city on a borrowed bicycle. His legs ached every night. His back hurt. He was exhausted, but he never complained, not once, because every evening after work he did something that nobody told him to do. He read. Deepak had old books and magazines stacked in every corner of the shop. Business books, finance books, stories about companies and men who built things. Aryan read them all. He read until his eyes burned. He read until he fell asleep on the pages. He read on the bicycle while waiting outside buildings for people to collect their printed orders. Within 6 months, Aryan knew more about business than most people who had gone to college. He began to understand how money moved, how shops made profit, how even a small business could grow if managed the right way. He watched Deepak run his shop, and he could see clearly where money was being lost, where time was being wasted, where better decisions could be made. One evening, he carefully and respectfully told Deepak one small idea, a way to cut the cost of paper delivery by changing the route. Was nervous saying it. He thought Deepak might get angry. Instead, Deepak stared at him, tried the idea, and saved 300 rupees that month. After the Deepak started listening to Aryan more. He started asking his opinion on small decisions. Aryan was careful. He never made Deepak feel stupid. He always said things slowly and gently as suggestions, not orders. But then something happened that Aryan did not expect. Deepak's nephew came to the city. His name was Rohan. He was 25, well-dressed, well-fed, and had done a 2-year business course. He walked into the shop like he owned it, because in his mind, he did. He was family. Aryan was just a village boy with ink on his hands. Rohan looked at Aryan from the first day with a kind of look that was not quite dislike, but not quite respect either. It was the look of a man who had decided already that someone was beneath him, but Aryan kept his head down. He kept working. He kept reading. He kept giving good ideas slowly and quietly. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Aryan had come up with a new idea, a bigger one. He had calculated that Deepak's shop could expand its service to schools by printing cheap textbook covers and exercise book covers for a fixed monthly contract. He had written the entire plan on paper with numbers and dates and cost estimates. He was going to present it to Deepak that evening. But Rohan saw the papers on the table in the afternoon when Aryan was out on delivery. That evening, Deepak called Aryan and smiled proudly. He said Rohan had come up with a brilliant plan about school printing contracts and that they were going to try it. He said Rohan was so smart, just like his father. Aryan stood very still. He looked at Rohan, who was standing there, smiling a small, satisfied smile, looking right at Aryan with steady eyes. Aryan said nothing. He nodded. He even said it was a good idea. That night, he lay in the back of the shop on his thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. The anger inside him was enormous. It was like something trying to break through his chest, but he held it. He held it tight. He did not let it out. Not even a small sound, because he understood something important in that moment. The world was not going to be fair to him. That was already clear. The world had never been fair to him, not once. So waiting for fairness was a waste of time. What he needed was not fairness. He needed a position. He needed a moment. He needed one real chance, and he would have to create it himself, because nobody was going to hand it to him. He stayed in the shop for another 4 months. After that, the school contract worked exactly the way his plan had said it would. Deepak was happy. Rohan took all the credit, but Aryan had used those 4 months. Well, he had saved a little money. He had learned the city. He had made contacts, small ones, but real ones. He had learned who the paper suppliers were. He had learned where the schools were. He had learned the names of people who made decisions in small offices across the city. And then one quiet morning, he woke up, packed his small bag, left a thank you note for Deepak, and walked out. He was not angry. He was not broken. He was ready. The city had tried to swallow him whole on the first day. He had been stolen from. He had been overlooked. He had slept on a hard floor for 10 months, but he had learned everything he needed. And now the real game was about to begin. The first thing Aryan did after leaving Deepak's shop was find the cheapest room in the city. He found it in the old part of Jaipur. A small dark room with a single window that looked out at a brick wall. The room smelled like damp and old paint. The shared bathroom was at the end of a long hallway. The landlord was a thin man who looked at Aryan with suspicious eyes and said 1 month payment in advance or no. Room Aryan paid. He had very little money left after that, but he was not scared. He was focused. He had one plan. He went back to every school he had visited during his delivery days for Deepak's shop. He went on foot because he could not afford the bus. He wore his cleanest shirt, which was still not very clean. He carried a notebook where he had written his business idea in neat, simple words: a printing service for schools, monthly contracts, fixed prices, reliable delivery. The first 5 schools said no. The 6th school did not even let him pass the gate. The 7th school told him to come back next month. He came back next month. They said come back after summer holidays. He came back after summer holidays. The principal was not there. He sat outside that school on a footpath for 2 hours waiting. He had brought 2 biscuits from the market, and he ate them slowly watching the school gate. He was not going to leave without a meeting when the principal finally came back and saw Arian still sitting there. He looked surprised. He was a heavy man with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He asked who Arian was and what he wanted. Arian stood up straight. He spoke clearly and simply. He did not beg. He did not use big words. He explained the idea in 4 sentences, what it cost, how it worked, why it saved the school money and time. The principal looked at him for a moment. Then he said he would think about it. Arian did not celebrate. He had heard that before he went home and waited 3 days later. A boy knocked on his door and handed him a folded paper. It was a note from the principal saying the school would try him for 2 months. Small order, tight deadline, low price. Arian read that note 4 times. He sat on the edge of his thin mattress and breathed slowly. He had no machine. He had no shop. He had almost no money, but he had a contract. He went to a local print shop run by an old man named Harish. He told Harish the deal. He said, "Give me the machines for night hours only, and I will give you 30% of whatever." Iron Harish was old and tired, and not interested at first. But Arian came back the next evening with a cup of tea for the old man and sat with him and talked quietly about the plan something. And how Arian spoke made the old man say yes. For the next 2 months, Arian worked at night. He printed everything by hand almost. He delivered everything personally. He checked every single page. He made sure every cover was clean. Every edge was straight. Every order was on time. He treated that small school contract like it was a million-rupee deal, because in his mind it was everything. At the end of 2 months, the principal called him in and doubled the order word. Moved slowly in that part of the city, the way it always does in tight communities where people talk. School principals talk to each other. Temple committees talk to each other. A second school came to him, then a third within 8 months. Arian had contracts with 6 schools. He had saved enough to rent a tiny workspace. He hired 1 person to help him, a young man named Suresh, who'd also come from a small village and needed work. Arian paid him fairly. He paid him the way he wished someone had paid him when he first arrived in the city. But just as things started to feel stable, something happened that threw everything sideways. A man named Mr. Basha found out about Arian. Mr. Basha was not a bad man, exactly. He was a businessman who owned a large printing company in the city. He had contracts with big companies, big schools, big government offices. He had money. He had connections. He had influence. He called Arian to his office one afternoon. Arian went not knowing what to expect. The office was large and cool with leather chairs and a glass desk. Mr. Basha was perhaps 50 years old. Well-dressed, calm-faced. He looked at Arian the way a man looks at something small he finds interesting. He offered Arian a deal. He said, "Come work under my company. I will give you salary and resources, and in return, you handle the school contracts." Under my company name, Arian sat quietly and listened to everything Mr. Basha said. Then he asked 1 question. He said, "What happens to my name in this deal?" Mr. Basha smiled a smooth, practiced smile and said, "Your name does not matter in business, son. Only the company name matters." Arian looked at the glass desk, at the leather chairs, at the large framed certificates on the wall. Then he stood up. He thanked Mr. Basha for his time. He said he needed 2 days to think. He went home and sat in his small, dark room. He thought about the offer for a long time. He thought about how tired he was, how much easier it would be to say yes. He thought about his mother working at the river with wet hands. He thought about how fast he could send her money if he took the salary. But then he thought about something else. He thought about Rohan and Devakaya's shop taking his idea and wearing it like his own. He thought about how that felt. He thought about the school principal who sat outside and waited for him. He thought about Suresh, who trusted him enough to work for a small new business. His name did matter. It mattered very much. He Called Mr. Basha the next morning and said no thank you. Mr. Basha was quiet for a moment. Then he said that was a mistake. Arian said maybe. He put the phone down and looked out his small window at the brick wall outside. Then he picked up his notebook and started writing the next plan. He did not know it yet, but that no was the most important word he had ever spoken in his life. It was the word that kept everything his own. It was the word that saved him from becoming someone else's shadow, and it was the word that made Mr. Basha decide to destroy him. It started quietly, the way most dangerous things do first. One school canceled its contract. No explanation, just a polite letter saying they were going in a different direction. Then another school said the same. Then a third Arian went to each school. In person, he asked what happened. He asked if there was a problem with the quality or the delivery or the price. Every principal gave him a different reason, but none of the reasons felt real. They all had the same careful, rehearsed sound, like words someone else had put in their mouths. He went home and sat with Suresh. They looked at their numbers together. The business was bleeding. They had workers now. They had rent. They had supplies on credit. If 3 more contracts fell, they would have nothing. Arian called every contact he had in the city. He asked carefully. He listened carefully, and slowly a picture began to form. Mr. Basha had gone to each of those schools. He had offered them a better deal, cheaper, faster, with guarantees that a small new company could not offer. He had used his size and his money to press Arian out of the market, one school at a time. It was not illegal. It was not dramatic. It was quiet, calculated, and very effective. And then the worst part came. Suresh came to Arian one evening with a strange look on his face. He sat down, and after a long silence, he said that Mr. Basha had offered him a position, a real position with a salary twice what Arian could afford. He said he was sorry, but he needed to accept it. He had a family back home. He had responsibilities. He could not stay with a sinking ship. Arian did not get angry. He did not say anything harsh. He sat with Suresh for a while. He asked about his family. He listened. He then told Suresh he understood. He told him to take the job. He shook his hand and said no hard feelings. When Suresh left, Arian sat alone in his small workspace. It was almost night. The machines were quiet. The room felt very large and very empty. For the first time, he put his head in his hands. Was not crying, exactly, but he was close. It was a feeling heavier than crying. It was the feeling of a man who has worked with everything he has and still watched it fall apart piece by piece. It was the feeling his mother must have felt 1,000 times. She had been here many times in this dark quiet of a failing life. He thought about calling her, but he could not. She would hear it in his voice, and she would worry, and she was already working too hard. He could not add his weight to her back. Stayed in that empty room for a long time. Then at some point in the night, something changed. He stopped thinking about what he had lost. He started thinking about what was still there. He still had 2 schools who had not canceled yet. He still had his workspace, his machines, the old man, Parrish, who had given him night hours in the beginning. He still had his notebook full of plans. He still had every bit of knowledge he had built over the past 2 years. And he had one more thing. He had anger. Now he let it out. He opened it up like a window and let it come in full and clean and sharp. Not the blind, angry kind. The kind that focuses a man. The kind that makes him think 3 steps ahead. He took out his notebook and wrote 3 words at the top of a new page. He wrote them in big letters. Then he started writing. He wrote for hours. He wrote every idea he had, every contact, every possible move. The problem was not that Mr. Basha was powerful. The problem was that Arian had been thinking small. He had been happy with schools. He had been satisfied with small contracts. But small contracts could be taken away by one bigger man. What he needed was something that a big man could not simply buy out from under him. Something different. Something that the market did not already have in that city. By morning, he had the answer. There was one thing that every school, every office, Every small business in the city needed, but nobody was doing it well and cheaply at the same time. Custom packaging and labeling for small local businesses, local shops that sold food or cloth or handmade items, needed simple, clean labels and packaging, but the big printing companies did not care about them. Their orders were too small. The big companies wanted big clients. Arian had spent 2 years building relationships with small school principals, people who ran small operations, people like him, people who were always overlooked by the big players. He would go to the small businesses, the sweet shops, the local clothing sellers, the small food makers, the women who made pickles and sold them at markets. He would print their labels, their packaging, their small business cards at honest prices, and with fast delivery, he would build something that the big companies could not be bothered to take from him because they did not even want it. Went to Harris the next morning and said he needed help again. The old man looked at him carefully. He could see the dark circles under Ariana's eyes, the tired jaw, the hungry look. He could see that this boy had been through something hard that night. But he could also see that fire still burning, the same fire that had walked into his shop 2 years ago. With nothing but an idea, Harris said yes. Arian spent the next 3 weeks walking every street in the old market. He went door to door, shop to shop. He was not selling. He was listening. He asked each small shop owner what they needed. He took notes. He came back with samples. Within 1 month, he had 11 new clients. None of them were big. None of them paid much, but together they kept the business alive. And one morning, Arian woke up and realized something. He was not finished. He was just getting started. 3 years passed, and in those 3 years, Arian did not rise the way people rise in stories, the way where everything happens fast and beautiful with music playing in the background. No, he rose the way real people rise, slowly, painfully, with long stretches of doubt and short moments of progress. But he rose. His small packaging business grew 1 client at a time. He hired 2 people, then 4, then 8. He moved from the tiny workspace to a proper small office with a real sign outside. His name was on that sign, Arian Printing Services. 4 words that he had once written in his notebook like a dream. The small local businesses he served were loyal in a way that big corporate clients never are, because he had gone to them when nobody else did. He had sat with the old sweet shop owner and understood what he needed. He had helped the woman who made pickles design a label that made her product look professional. He had treated every small client like they were the most important client in the world, and those clients told other people. The business grew. He did not forget Mr. Basha. He never forgot. But he also did not waste energy on revenge, because he understood now that the best revenge was not anger, it was success. The kind of success that speaks quietly, but very clearly. Then one afternoon a letter arrived at his office. It was from Mr. Basha. The letter was formal and professional, but beneath the formal words, Arian could read the truth. Mr. Basha's company was losing ground in the local market. He had been too focused on big contracts and had ignored the small business segment completely. Now that segment was growing fast because of exactly the thing Arian had built. Mr. Basha was not asking for partnership. Not exactly. He was asking for a meeting. Arian read that letter twice. Then he put it on his desk and went home. That night he called his mother. For the first time in a long time, he told her everything. He told her about Mr. Basha, about Suresh, about the night he sat alone in the empty workspace. He told her about the small shops and the labels and the long walks through the market and the slow growth month by month. His mother listened without interrupting. She had always been a woman of very few words, but when he finished, she said something that he would remember for the rest of his life. She said, "I knew you would do this. I always knew." She said, "Your eyes were never the eyes of someone who stays on the ground." He could not speak for a moment. His throat felt tight. She asked one thing. She asked when she could come to the city to see his office. He told her soon. He promised soon. He went back the next morning and called Mr. Basha. He agreed to a meeting. They sat across a table in a quiet restaurant. Both men were very different from the last time they had sat together. Arian was no longer a young man with ink on his hands and hope in his eyes. He was calm. He was quiet. He was prepared. Mr. Bashar was still powerful, still well dressed, still smooth-faced, but there was something different in his eyes too, a kind of careful respect that had not been there before Mr. Bashar proposed a partnership. He wanted to expand into the local small business market. He wanted to use Arian's network, Arian's relationships, Arian's understanding of that world. He offered a financial deal that would make Arian very comfortable. Arian listened to everything. He waited until Mr. Bashar finished. Then he spoke. He said there is one condition. He said his name stays on the business. His name stays visible. His team stays. His culture stays. His way of treating small clients stays. Mr. Bashar studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. They shook hands. That evening, Arian went back to Merper. For the first time in 4 years, he did not go in a big car. He went on the bus. He wanted to arrive the way he had left, by bus. With a bag and a heart full of something, the village looked smaller than he remembered. The roads were the same. The trees were the same. The river was the same, but he was not the same. He walked to his old mud house. His mother was standing at the door. She must have heard footsteps on the path, because she was already looking his face. She looked at his face first, not his clothes, not his bag. His face. She wanted to see if the fire was still there or if the city had taken it. When she saw his eyes, she started to cry. She did not make a sound. She just stood and cried quietly, the way a woman cries when she has been holding her worry for 4 years and finally puts it down. He walked to her and put his arms around her small, bent body. She was so small. He had forgotten how small she was. She felt like someone he needed to protect and someone he needed to thank. At the same time, both things at once. He stood there holding his mother outside the mud house where he had grown up, hungry and invisible, and told he was nobody. He thought about the 700 rupees. He thought about the plastic bag with books. He thought about the night he read by candlelight. He thought about Rohan stealing his idea. He thought about Deepak, who helped him anyway. He thought about Harish, who said yes twice. He thought about every person who said no and every person who said yes. He thought about his father. He thought about that man for one quiet moment, not with anger, not with that old wound. He thought about him with a kind of distant sadness, a man who left and missed everything because of his own fear or weakness. Or whatever it was, he had missed everything. He had missed this moment outside this mud house with this woman. Arian was glad he was not his father. 2 months later, he brought his mother to the city. He showed her the office. He showed her the sign. With his name, he introduced her to his workers. She shook every hand. She remembered every name. She walked slowly through the office, touching the walls, touching the machines, like she was touching something she had believed in for a long time, without ever seeing it before she left. She stood at the door and looked back at the office one more time. Then she turned to Arian and said something in a very quiet voice. She said, "This did not happen because you were lucky." She said, "This happened because you never stopped." Then the twist came, the one nobody expected. Not even Arian. A week after his mother visited, Arian received a letter. This one had no company name on the envelope, just a handwritten name on the back. It was his father, the man who had walked out that door when Arian was 6 years old, had somehow found his name in a newspaper article about the new business partnership with Basha and Co. He had written a long letter, many pages, full of explanations, full of apologies, full of words. That came 20 years too late. Arian read the letter once all the way through. He did not feel rage. He had expected rage, but it did not come. What came instead was something quieter, something sadder. He felt sorry for this man who had spent 20 years running away from his own life and had come back only when his son had become successful. Not when the son was hungry, not when the mother was washing clothes at a river with wet hands in cold water. Only now Arian put the letter in a drawer. He did not throw it away. He did not answer it. He just put it away. Maybe one day he would answer it. Maybe not. What he knew was that the story of his life had not been written by his father or Mr. Basha or Rohan or any of the people who had tried to stop him or use him or take from him. It had been written by a boy who woke up before sunrise because he was afraid to waste a single hour. It had been written by a mother who went to sleep a little hungry so her son could eat a little more. And it had been written in the dark by candlelight on the pages of a torn old book about men who changed the world. The boy with empty hands was not a boy anymore, and his hands were not empty.